Someday you are going to die. So is everyone you have ever met. The person you love most in the world, the face you would know in the dark, the voice that means home to you. One day, that person will stop. The chest will not rise. The eyes will not open. The warmth will drain out of the skin slowly over hours, until what is lying there is not quite a person anymore, and not quite an object either. It is something new, something we have no good word for. A body. And here's the strange, heavy, human part. You will not be able to just walk away. Something deep inside you will refuse. For almost the entire history of our species, our ancestors stood exactly where you will one day stand, over the still body of someone they loved. And they had to answer a question that had no answer yet. So here it is, the oldest, hardest question a human being has ever had to face. What do you do with the dead? No coffins, no graveyards, no funerals, no priests, no undertakers, no soft music, no polished stone with a name carved into it. Just a band of people, a cooling body, a setting sun, and the terrible knowledge that whatever they decided, they had to decide it soon. This is the story of how ancient humans dealt with their dead. And it is really the story of the first time any creature on Earth looked at death and refused to look away. Let's begin with the body itself. Because before there was grief, before there was ritual, there was a problem. A real, physical, urgent problem lying on the ground. When a person dies, the body does not simply switch off and stay peaceful. It changes. Within hours, the muscles lock stiff. The skin pales and cools. And then, as the days pass, it begins to break down and it begins to smell. A smell so powerful, so specific, that the human brain is hardwired to find it revolting. That disgust is not an accident. It is protection. A dead body can carry disease. It draws flies. And worst of all, out there in the ancient dark, it draws visitors. Because a corpse is food. To a hyena, to a wolf pack, to a wandering big cat, the body of your grandmother is simply meat, left out in the open. And nothing tells a predator that a group of humans is weak and grieving and distracted, quite like the smell of one of their own rotting nearby. So the very first pressure was brutally practical. You could not just leave the body where it lay. Not next to the fire. Not next to the children. The dead, however beloved, had become a danger to the living. And for a very long time, the answer was the simplest one imaginable. You left. Or you moved the body away out to where the animals would take it, and you did not look back. This is what almost every other animal does. A death happens, the group moves on, and the world closes over the gap as if it had never been there. For millions of years, that was the whole story. But somewhere along the way, something cracked open in the human mind. And to understand it, we have to talk about the thing that came before burial. Grief. Here is something that might surprise you. We are not the only animals who seem to mourn. Watch a herd of elephants come across the bones of one of their own, and they will stop. They will grow quiet. They will reach out with their trunks and turn the bones over, gently, running the tips over the smooth curve of a skull, standing in a kind of silence, sometimes for hours. Elephants visit their dead, and a mother chimpanzee, when her infant dies, will sometimes carry the tiny body for days, even weeks, grooming it, holding it, refusing to set it down long after it has gone cold. She knows on some level that it is over, and still she cannot let go. That refusal, that ache, is older than humanity itself. It is not something we invented. It is something we inherited. The grief was already there, sitting in the deep animal brain, waiting. What humans did was take that grief and for the first time, do something with it. Because we had one thing the elephant and the chimp did not. we knew. We understood, in a way no creature ever had before, exactly what death was. We could look at a still body and grasp the whole unbearable truth of it. That this person is gone, that they are not coming back, and, the cruelest thought of all, that one day, this will be me. To be human is to be the animal that knows it is going to die. And once you know that, you can never again treat a dead body as just meat. It is a mirror. It is your own future lying on the ground. Try for a second to imagine the very first time, the first human, or something almost human, kneeling beside a companion who will not wake up, shaking them, waiting for the breath that does not come, watching the flies gather and slowly, horribly, understanding, not just that this one is gone, but that the same silence is coming for the shaker and for everyone they know. That is the heaviest thought any mind had ever held, and a creature that can think it needs somewhere to put it. Ritual, ceremony, the grave. All of it may have begun as the only way to carry a weight that would otherwise crush you. We bury the dead, in part, so the living can keep standing up. So humans began, slowly, to do something no animal had ever done. They began to care for the dead. And we can actually find the evidence, buried in the earth, older than you would ever believe. Go to a cave in northern Spain, deep underground, at the bottom of a 13-meter vertical shaft. Scientists call it Cima de los Huesos, the pit of bones. And down at the bottom, they found them. The remains of at least 28 ancient humans, dropped into that shaft on purpose, around 400,000 years ago. These were not our species. They lived and died hundreds of thousands of years before the first modern human. And yet, someone gathered their dead and carried them and lowered them or dropped them into that deep, dark place. Why, we are not certain. But there is one detail that stops the breath. Among all those bones laid in the pit, there was a single object. One beautiful hand axe, made of rare pink quartzite, unlike anything else down there. Archaeologists nicknamed it Excalibur, a tool too fine to lose placed among the dead. It may be the oldest funeral offering ever found. A gift. For the dead. 400,000 years ago. And then came the Neanderthals, and they buried their dead. For a long time we imagined them as dumb brutes. We were wrong. In a cave called Shanidar, in the mountains of Iraq, researchers found the graves of several Neanderthals, laid to rest with what looks unmistakably like care. One of them, an old man, had lived for years with a withered arm, a crushed eye socket, and a leg so damaged he must have limped in constant pain. He could not have hunted. He could not have survived alone, which means somebody fed him. Somebody looked after a man who could give them nothing back for years. And when he finally died, they did not abandon him. They placed him in the earth. Around another Shanidar body, scientists found dense clusters of ancient pollen and wondered if the Neanderthals had laid their dead on a bed of flowers. That idea is fiercely argued about to this day. The pollen may have been carried in by burrowing bees or rodents. But strip away the flowers, and the deeper truth remains. And it is astonishing enough. Bodies placed deliberately, curled, as if sleeping, in graves, by a species we do not even call human. The urge to bury our dead is older than us. We were not the first. We just carried it further than anyone before. And once modern humans took it up, they poured their whole souls into it. Look at the color red. Again and again, in the oldest human graves across the world, archaeologists find the same thing. The dead, dusted and painted with red ochre, a rusty pigment ground from stone, bodies coated in it, graves filled with it. Red, the color of blood, the color of life, pressed onto skin that had gone gray and cold. It is hard not to read it as exactly what it looks like. A desperate, tender attempt to give back to the dead the one thing they had lost. To paint the life back on. Humans were doing this over 100,000 years ago. In a cave called Kafse, in what is now Israel, a young person and a child were buried together, stained with ochre, more than 90,000 years ago. And then there are the things they left in the grave. Travel to a place called Sungir in Russia and step back 34,000 years into the Ice Age. There, archaeologists uncovered one of the most breathtaking burials ever found. 2 children, laid head to head, and buried with them an almost unimaginable treasure. Thousands upon thousands of tiny beads, carved one by one from mammoth ivory, around 10,000 of them. Spears made from mammoth tusks that someone had somehow straightened. Carved ivory animals, pierced fox teeth by the 100. Now think about what that means. Each of those beads had to be carved by hand with stone tools. Experiments suggest a single bead could take the better part of an hour to make. Do the maths. The beads in that one grave represent thousands of hours of work. Months, possibly years of human labor in the middle of a brutal ice age, when every hour should have gone to finding food and staying alive. And instead, they spent it on the dead, on children. You do not do that for meat you are trying to get rid of. You do that for someone you believe is going somewhere. Someone who will need these things. The grave at Sungir is not a hole in the ground. It is a statement, screamed across 34,000 years. This life mattered. So why? Why would a starving, freezing band of humans pour that much into a grave? And here we arrive at the deepest part of the whole story. Because burial gives us 3 answers at once, and all 3 are true. The first answer is practical. Bury the body, and you hide the smell. You keep the scavengers away. You protect the living from disease and from the predators that a corpse attracts. A grave is, on the most basic level, a solution to a problem. The dead go into the ground because the ground is safe. The second answer is emotional. It is grief. It is a mother who cannot bear to see her child dragged off by hyenas. It is a band who loved this person, who cannot simply toss them aside like a broken tool. To dig a grave by hand in hard earth and to lay someone down gently, that is love doing the only thing it can still do. It is care that outlives its object. Tenderness with nowhere left to go. But the third answer is the one that changed everything. Belief. Because the moment you bury someone with a gift, with a tool, with food, with beads that took a year to carve, you are saying something extraordinary. You are saying, you are not really gone. You have gone somewhere. And you will need these things when you get there. That is the birth of an idea that would go on to shape every civilization that ever existed. The afterlife. The soul. The notion that a person is more than their body, that something in them continues after the breath stops. We do not know exactly when that thought first flickered into a human mind, but we can see its shadow in the graves. Every bead at Sungir, every axe in the pit, every flower argued over at Shanidar, is a fingerprint of the same staggering leap, the belief that death is not the end, but a door. And with that belief came the ancestors. Because if the dead go somewhere, then the dead still are. They can watch. They can be angry or pleased. They can be talked to and asked for help and feared. In many ancient cultures, the dead never truly left the community at all. They became the ancestors, a second, invisible tribe, living alongside the first. In the town of Jericho, 9,000 years ago, people buried their dead beneath the very floors of their homes. And sometimes they dug the skulls back up, packed them with plaster to rebuild the face, set shells into the eye sockets, and kept them. Grandparents, remade, watching over the household. The line between the living and the dead was not a wall. It was a doorway, and people walked through it in both directions. But if the dead could stay close, then the dead could also come back. And that thought was terrifying. Because for every ancestor who was loved and honored, there was the fear of the one who was not at peace. The restless dead, the angry dead, the thing that might crawl back out of the dark and come looking for the living. And so, alongside all that tenderness, we find its shadow. Bodies pinned down with heavy stones laid across the chest. Bodies bound tight, hands and feet tied, as if to stop them rising. Bodies buried face down, so that if they clawed their way up, they would only dig themselves deeper. In grave after grave, across the ancient world, you can feel it. The love, and right beside it, the dread. The first funerals were not only a goodbye. Sometimes they were a lock on the door. But burial was never the only answer. Across the world, different bands looked at the same problem and reached for different solutions. Some gave their dead to the sky. They carried the body up to a high place and laid it out, open to the air, and let the great birds do the rest. A practice that survives in parts of the world even now. To them, being picked clean by vultures was not horror. It was release. The body returned to the world it came from. Others turned to fire. On the shore of a dry lake in Australia, archaeologists found the remains of a woman who had been cremated. Her body burned, the bones crushed and burned again. Around 40,000 years ago. She is one of the oldest cremations ever discovered, and evidence that the deep human instinct to send the dead onward through flame is almost unthinkably old. And some, in the most unsettling answer of all, kept their dead the closest way possible. They ate them. It sounds like a nightmare, but sit with it for a moment because the truth is stranger and gentler than the horror. In some cultures, consuming a piece of a dead loved one was not an act of violence. It was an act of devotion. A way of keeping the person inside you, of not letting them leave, of carrying them onward in the only vessel left, your own body. In a cave in England called Gough's Cave, archaeologists found human skulls, carefully shaped into cups, around 15,000 years ago. Not the skulls of enemies, very likely the skulls of their own. Grief takes forms we can barely stand to look at. But underneath even this, the impulse is the same one you feel. I cannot let you go. And none of it was easy. We picture a grave as a simple thing, but stop and imagine actually digging one, with no metal, no shovel, just a stick, a flat stone, and your bare hands tearing at cold, root-choked earth, deep enough to hold a body, while your own grief pours down your face. Imagine the whole band stopping, in a world where stopping could mean starving, to carry a body, to gather the ochre, to sit with their dead. Death, for the ancient human, was not something that happened behind hospital doors, tidied away by strangers. It happened in their arms. They washed the body. They held it. They knew exactly what a dead person weighed and how the skin felt as it cooled. Death was close and constant and utterly personal in a way we have almost entirely forgotten. And out of that closeness, humans built the first great things they ever made. Long before there were palaces, before there were temples to any god, before there were even proper towns, people were moving enormous stones to house their dead. Across Europe, they raised vast tombs of rock and earth, chambers of stone so heavy it would have taken whole communities, hauling and lifting for years, to build a single one. Some are older than the Egyptian pyramids, older than writing, older than the wheel. Think about that. The first architecture on Earth, the first time human beings dragged the landscape itself into a shape, was not a home for the living. It was a home for the dead. We built for the people we had lost before we ever built for ourselves. The dead came first. So step back and look at the whole of it. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors faced the one enemy that always wins, and they refused to meet it with indifference. They could have walked away every time. Evolution would not have punished them for it. A dead body gives you nothing. It cannot hunt or help or love you back. By every cold calculation of survival, the smart thing to do with the dead is to leave them and move on. And humans, almost alone among all living things, said no. That refusal is one of the truest markers of who we are. Not the tools, not the fire, not the language even. The moment our ancestors first dug a grave and laid someone in it with care, they were doing something no rock, no river, no other animal had ever done. They were declaring that a life has meaning beyond its use, that a person is not erased just because their heart has stopped, that love does not end where the body does. A grave is the first monument. It is the first sentence in the long human story that says, "You were here, you mattered, and I will not let the world forget you." And here is the part that should stay with you. None of it has ended. You are still in this story. Everyone watching this has stood, or one day will stand, in a quiet room or at the edge of an open grave, feeling that exact ancient weight settle onto your chest. The same helpless ache the old Neanderthals felt in Shanidar Cave. The same one the mother felt at Sungir, carving beads through the night for a child she had already lost. Death has not changed at all in 100,000 years. Only the coffins have gotten nicer. Only the music has gotten softer. Underneath, we are still that same band of grieving apes, standing over a body we love, unable to walk away. And in that refusal to walk away, in the grave dug by hand, the flower that may or may not have been laid, the red ochre pressed into cold skin, the bead carved through the freezing dark. You can see the very thing that makes us human. Because the oldest act of civilization was not building a wall or lighting a fire or hunting a beast. It was one person kneeling in the dirt beside another and deciding that death would not have the last word. That is where we began. Not with survival, with love refusing to let go. Thanks for watching. If you like the questions most people are too afraid to ask, subscribe and stick around, because next time we are digging into another strange, forgotten corner of the world of ancient humans.